Welcome back to my channel. My name is LaShawn and this is Lush Uncut. A February 2022 article written by Michael Marshall and published by the American Heart Association titled Understanding Black Fatigue, How to Overcome It, discusses the definition of Black fatigue and the dangerous health effects of systematic racism in America. Before she gave the feeling a name, Mary Frances Winters felt it constantly. She calls it a dull, drowning sound that is always present and an underlying syndrome of sorts that permeates my very being. It's the exhaustion born of the day-to-day small acts of aggression or small acts of disrespect a Black person endures, the endless need to prove your worth, and the constant exposure to news about injustice and violence being inflicted on people who look like you. She calls the feeling Black fatigue. And though the problem is not from their marketing, and though the problem is not of their making, for the sake of their health, Black people need to understand and acknowledge the toll of living with racism, says Winters, a diversity and equity consultant from North Carolina. You have to take care of yourself. Keep in mind, before I continue, that this article was written in 2022, and this was peak BLM, peak DEI, post George Floyd and right in the middle of the Biden-Harris administration. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recognizes racism as a threat to public health. On a biological level, structural racism-based stress can lead to long-lasting damage to the body and brain, according to a 2020 American Heart Association report in the journal Circulation. It defines structural racism as the normalization and legitimization of an array of dynamics, historical, cultural, institutional, and interpersonal, that routinely advantage white people while producing cumulative and chronic adverse outcomes for people of color. That report describes how racism harms all historically marginalized groups. It also notes that Black adults are more likely to face discrimination and the cumulative effects of racial trauma, but are less likely to receive treatment for their mental health. Like I said, this article was written in the middle of the Biden-Harris administration, post-George Floyd, post-BLM, summer of love, and when every major institution, business, organization was paying penance to the BLM movement. So the fact that the American Heart Association published this article was of no surprise at that time. And honestly speaking, I don't think the term Black fatigue got a lot of attention back then. However, it has re-emerged in the highways and byways of the interweb. I was scrolling on TikTok the other day and came across a video describing what Black fatigue is and basically what it means. Let's take a look.
Well, there's this term that's going around called Black fatigue, and what Black fatigue is, you are tired of certain Black behaviors in the Black community that needs to be addressed. It is literally making you tired at this point. When it comes to Black on Black crime, upholding things that are not right in the Black community, like baby mama culture and the rap culture that we have now, gang violence, all of these things that are horrible for the Black community.
Okay, before I continue, let me just say this quick disclaimer because I feel like this is a very sensitive topic for most people, understandably, and I want to make sure that I am applying as much grace and wisdom when sharing my opinions on this as I possibly can. So first of all, I am aware that these behaviors and cultural trends are not exclusive to Black America. And yes, I am discussing it in a very generalized manner. And I know that this can be a gateway for racism in certain aspects of American or certain aspects of, cultural and political discussions. And I know that I am taking a risk by kind of having this conversation, to give some unwanted actors unofficial permission to be racist. I hope I worded that correctly. In other words, if you're a racist and you see something like this, then you can be like, you know what? Yeah, even the Black people are agreeing with me. I am not greenlighting any type of racism whatsoever. And again, I am aware that these behaviors are not exclusive to Black America. However, we are talking about Black America in this context of this video. And I feel like while it is difficult for us to have this conversation, I think it's a necessary one in order for us to move forward, not just as the Black community in this country, but as Americans as a whole. So there's that. So let's get into it. Now, you're probably wondering, what are the examples of Black fatigue that's being referenced in the video that I just shown you that kind of defines what it is? And if you scroll on social media and X and you type in the term Black fatigue, you're going to see exactly what it is that I at least am referring to, and I'm going to, what I'm going to talk about in this video. But just for example's sake, I'm going to show you this video. This video went viral, I think it was maybe like a week or two ago, of a interaction between a Frontier airline customer service rep and a customer. Let's take a look.
Here 30 minutes before the flight.
Can you please leave, sir?
No.
Can you please leave my personal space?
I'm decided that you ain't gonna let me check in.
Make me check you in.
You literally work for a company that I bought a plane ticket for. Check in.
And you're not getting on your flight. It's the Mayday flight. You didn't. And you think, you're going to check me in. I bet you we won't. Okay?
I paid for a ticket.
And you
I paid for a ticket.
for agent assistant, and you checked in 3 hours later. Hello.
I just said that I.
Get on your flight.
Yeah, I just said that I would pay the $25.
And you thought you were going to get on your flight. And you thought you were going to get on your flight. And you thought you were going to get on your flight. And you thought you were going to get on your flight.
Okay, and if that is not enough context for you, here's another video that I came across on X. First of all, let's be honest. This behavior is a societal sore, and frankly, it is annoying. And again, I know this is an uncomfortable conversation, but if you are a logically thinking person, a productive member of society, someone that literally just wants to go about your day and not be bothered by this type of behavior, if you were to see this in person in front of you, you would be annoyed by it. And that's exactly why I feel like we need to have this conversation, because whenever we do, people get really hurt about it, and it prevents us from moving forward in a way that's productive. But at the end of the day, it is an objective reality that this behavior is just undesirable if you care about decency and law and order. And I think we have to come together as a country, as a society, and admit that no one wants to see this in their day-to-day. No one wants to see themselves represented in this type of way. And I feel like, again, the Black people that get offended and get really emotional when we try to talk about these things, you have to get past that emotional response and recognize that this is how you are being represented, not just in America, but in the world as a whole. And you should have a problem with that. Okay. In addition to that, when I went through the Black fatigue, thing on TikTok, when I searched it, a lot of people that are expressing frustration are Black people, which I think is amazing, because again, I think it's so, normal for us to get really butthurt about this conversation and not want to have it. But it looks like we are getting to a point where everyone's just like, listen, I am tired of excusing this. I'm tired of, feeling uncomfortable when I'm pointing out that this behavior is not okay. We have to talk about it. And I think it's also a good thing that the people that are leading this conversation, as according to what I'm seeing on my For You page on TikTok and on X also, are Black. Because if a person of another race, specifically white, was to come out and say this, they would receive mass condemnation. I think one of the main issues that I have with this behavior, and one of the main things that are fueling this behavior, is the fact that there is an entire entertainment industry, okay, that profits from the support of this disgusting behavior. When you look at shows like Love and Hip Hop, that's been very popular for a long time. I don't know if it's still going, but it was very popular for a long time. What you see in that show is just Black people acting just ghetto, ratchet, undesirably, just chaotic, disordered. I don't know how many synonyms I can find for just unwanted and just gross behavior. And it's not just, in Hollywood, it's also in the music industry. When you look at the hip hop and rap music, not all they're talking about, but a majority of the things that people are rapping about is this type of just unwanted behavior. You're talking about the violence, the baby mama and baby daddy culture that's being glorified, the over sexualization of women, and the encouragement of violence that young men get from listening to this music. Like, this is the black fatigue that people are talking about. At some point, if you're living in a society and you desire order and you desire decency, these aspects of current day America would bother you. Again, especially when the people that are portrayed for, participating in this behavior looks like you. It bothers me when I see, Sexy Red or a Megan Thee Stallion or, another famous rap artist, and they're just shaking their behinds, on camera in front of thousands and millions of people. And that's the representation that I get. I don't want that representation at all whatsoever. Okay. I don't want it to have to balance out any other type of representation. I would rather it not exist at all. So yes, I am fatigued grossly. As a matter of fact, you have to ask yourself, right? Because, people are having this conversation about black fatigue, about black culture, and, what is the root of this? What is causing this type of behavior? And I think at this point, this is a conversation that conservatives have been having for a very long time. And the fact of the matter is the breakdown of the black family, and the decentering of the church in the black community is responsible for this behavior. Because if you look at the history of black America in this country, even, during like Jim Crow days or like in the 1940s and 50s, you do not see black people acting like this. It's not as if this is directly connected to the history and legacy of slavery in this country. You cannot blame that. And you cannot also blame racism or systematic racism or structural racism or the day-to-day, oppressive behavior, that black people have to deal with. It's a cultural problem. Okay. And we need to get to the point where we are able to admit that so we can move forward. Something else that's fueling this behavior or the excusing of this behavior is the black entitlement that has emerged following the George Floyd era and the dismissal of criticism of this behavior with claims of racism. Because you'll see a lot of videos online where a black person is being called out, whether that's like the frontier situation where you're like, you can't act like that. You're at work, you're supposed to be doing a job or yada, yada, yada. And they scream racism. And oftentimes they get very entitled in these interactions. And you're like, yo, why do you feel like, one, you can act like that, two, you could talk to someone like that, and like that this entire thing is okay. And a part of that is the entitlement that people gained after, the summer of love 2020, when you had 2020, when you had every institution, and I'm talking about Hollywood, businesses, in like all areas of society literally bent the knee to the Black Lives Matter movement and said, you know what? Yes, Black people are oppressed in this country. It gave a lot of people the green light to walk around very entitled and with a serious lack of self-accountability. Some of this is fueled by white liberal guilt.
It's wild to me how non-Black people swear up and down they're just so tired of Black people. Tired of hearing about racism and anti-Blackness. Tired of being called out. Tired of Black voices, Black issues, Black content, yada, yada, yada.
I feel like this perspective is just so outdated. And I'm glad that it's outdated because, again, I think it's time for the adults to enter the room and be prepared to have a hard conversation. We love talking about hard conversations and difficult conversations and conversations. Like, how about we have a conversation about what the heck is going on with Black America? Okay. And for once, I wish that white liberals would just, just stay out of this one, guys. And I don't like to be that person. I was like, oh, if you're this type of person, then you shouldn't be a part of the conversation. But like, again, this is a conversation I feel would be best held in the middle of the Black community, because it just should be. And I think, white liberalism is such a cancer to Black America in so many ways. White liberalism convinced the Black family that the federal government was their savior. It was white liberalism that convinced the Black woman to abandon her husband and rewarded her for it. It was white liberalism that resulted in the Black man abandoning his family. It was white liberalism that is responsible for the murder of 60 million Black children in this country. And it is white liberalism that refuses to allow the Black man to ever be held accountable for his own actions, even when those requesting accountability are Black themselves. you can have whatever political disposition you choose to have, no matter what your skin color is, right? I don't like to tell people that you can't think this way because of whatever the case may be. But white liberalism, white guilt is very frustrating because it refuses to allow Black America to be held accountable because it makes their tummy hurt. Okay, because the white liberal doesn't want to feel bad if the Black man is being told that he should be held accountable for his action. It makes them uncomfortable. It feels as if that they're, somehow racist, or whatever the case may be. Your guilt is not enough to stop the progress of an entire community. And on top of that, there are a lot of white liberals that will never live in the communities that are, severely Black fatigued. They love to live in their gated communities or their very expensive high rises, far away from the problems they make excuses for. And I think that's what irritates me about it the most, honestly speaking. Closing out the video for the day, one last thing I want to say. While the conversation about Black fatigue is still mostly contained to social media, the fact that it is happening signals a change in Americans' attitude towards this lawless and frankly ghetto behavior. And it's a conversation that I really and sincerely hope that we continue to have. Thank you for taking the time out to check out my channel. If you enjoyed it, go ahead, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, throw something in the comment section. And if you have not, hit the notification bell so that when I upload again, you will be notified. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your time and your attention. Remember to be blessed and be a blessing. Thank you.